Irate in Iowa, bitterness, recriminations, and coin flips. I'm John Phillips, and this is The Rundown. On the last edition of The Rundown, we talked about the Republicans. Now it's time to take a look at the Democrats. Hillary barely edged Bernie by a razor-thin margin in the closest Iowa caucus vote in history. Final tally, Hillary Clinton gets 49.8% to Bernie Sanders' 49.6%. Martin O'Malley got diddly and has dropped out of the race. If we're counting delegates, Hillary gets 26, while Bernie gets 21, and Bernie supporters are bitter. His campaign is questioning shenanigans and confusion at polling places, and his campaign manager, Jeff Weaver, says, quote, "We're not likely to ever know what the actual result was," end quote. There's also a coin flipping controversy. In Iowa, when candidates are tied for a delegate, they award it with a flip of a coin. Numerous sources reported that of 6 coin flips, Hillary Clinton won every single time. The Clinton campaign and the Iowa Democratic Party disputes that, claiming that Sanders actually won more coin flips than Clinton, but they also say they don't bother to keep official records of any of the coin flips, so just trust us on that one. All of which has Bernie's mostly young supporters who aren't old enough to know that socialism is a bad idea putting on their tinfoil hats. Is Hillary's narrow win over Sanders a victory for her, or has she alienated the enthusiastic young Democrats she'll need in the general election? Joining me to talk about all the controversy is author and political satirist Scott Ott in Dallas, Texas, and stand-up comic and PJTV contributor Stephen Cruiser joins me in studio. So, Cruiser, Hillary Clinton began this campaign with all the endorsements, all the money, a brand name, a woman who has campaigned before in Iowa back in 2008 when she ran for the presidency the first time, and was darn near beaten by a guy who Politico, and I love this description, described as a man who looks like a physicist caught in a wind tunnel. How did this happen?
Once again, I'll reiterate, she is the worst candidate in history. Okay, she's an awful candidate. Always has been, always will be. The more she's exposed to the public, the less the public likes her. She's been out there for a few months now. The other thing is that Bernie has this je ne sais quoi about him that makes you like watching him even if you don't agree with him, because he's got the whole Irwin Corey thing going, and he's out there and he's this mad professor sort of thing. And the young kids, I mean, you got to feel for the young liberals. They don't have a young person other than Martin O'Malley to go to, and Martin O'Malley, you know, he was boring, bland, and they couldn't latch on to him. So the young kids are going for the crazy grandpa, and this is happening because Hillary can't do anything to energize a crowd. She can energize the old school supporters who are afraid of her, but she can't energize an audience, and he's their one option for energizing an audience. And he's brilliant at it. He gets out there, he rants and raves, and the Koch brothers of the oligarchy, and, you know, and they all, I don't know what that means, but I want it gone. So it's just a matter of personality here. It's a clash of personalities, and one of the candidates doesn't have one.
Scott, was this campaign anything other than an unmitigated disaster for Hillary?
No, I think that's a good way of describing it. I mean, think about it. You've got the most powerful political machine that has probably ever existed in the history of the Republic, and you go up against a guy who is barely electable in his home state, and nobody had ever heard of this guy 10 months ago. And you had what was it, like a 60-point lead at the beginning of the race, and now it's 0.2%. I'll tell you, and I hate to constantly bring up my own personal experience, but in one of my races for county executive, the margin was less than 2%, and we did a recount. So when you're talking 0.2%, I think that there is legitimate grounds not only for some sort of recount, although I don't know if it's possible with the sloppy paper balloting process that's observed in these caucuses, but at the very least, I think Bernie can proclaim victory, in a sense, in Iowa. The fact that he has put such a scare into the Clinton machine is practically miraculous.
Does the fact that Hillary won so many of those delegates based on coin flips add to the Bernie narrative that the party elites, the rich people that fund the Democratic Party, and the players that have been in elected office for years and years and years have put the fix in on him, and they are absolutely out to screw him over?
Most definitely. You couldn't be more so. unless Debbie Wasserman Schultz had done each of the coin flips. Had she been traveling around, that would be the only way it would make it seem more so. And I got to hand it to the Democrats. I didn't think they could find a way to further denigrate the electoral process in ways they've done in the past, and now they've got coin flips in there. It's just next thing they're going to go with telepathy. Well, I think he wants to vote for Hillary Clinton. I mean, just when I think that they can't be more disrespectful of the process, they find a new way. So kudos to them.
You know, Scott, as they march towards New Hampshire, the electorate's paying attention to what happened in Iowa, and they saw that Bernie Sanders got a raw deal with the coin flips. Do you think now the margin of victory, assuming that Bernie, in fact, wins in New Hampshire, as the polls are indicated, do you think he's going to run up the score now because people are so upset at how he was treated in Iowa?
Not only that, even if you don't believe that there were any shenanigans involving the tossing of the coin, because it is possible that 6 coin tosses in 6 different locations came up heads. It's not miraculous. It's, not that difficult for that to happen. Yeah. But if you look at that and say, holy cow, you mean this guy can actually beat Hillary Clinton? I think there's no, as Cruiser pointed out, there's no enthusiasm for Hillary Clinton. I have a daughter who's 27 years old. She said she doesn't have a single friend who is supporting Hillary Clinton, but they'll vote for her if she's the nominee out of desperation. But you've got total lukewarmness on the Clinton side. And going into New Hampshire, I think a lot of people will say, you know what? Screw it. The Clinton machine can be beaten, and I want to be part of Bernie's 30-point margin of victory.
Did Bill Clinton look ill to you when he was standing up there on stage with her? Because I was listening to Hillary Clinton, and I was trying to pay attention with how she was going to spin this bad result, and I couldn't focus on anything other than Bill. And I don't know if that's going to affect the election one way or the other based on, there have been rumors that her health is not necessarily how she is presenting it. But the fact that it's just in your face, as it was on election night, is just something that people around me were talking about. Did that happen to you?
I saw all the conversation about it, and frankly, I didn't notice it the first time because I was so focused on her, because that was an angry speech. That was the angriest victory speech you're ever going to see. And I was noticing that she was leaning on the podium most of the time. She didn't free up both hands. But I was waiting for, pterodactyls to come out of her eyes or something, because she was like screaming at people, and Grandma was yelling. And then I went back and I looked, and he does look frail, but I've thought he's looked that way for a long time now. I don't think he looks any worse than he has for the last 3 years. He's been extraordinarily thin and haggard for quite a while now. So, but the staring right there, that we're seeing, that's what was. He seemed a little out of it at times. Or he seemed a little, just like, oh, who is she again? That seemed weird to me. His appearance didn't look any different, but the way he was acting sometimes with the blank stares, that seemed like a new thing.
Did you notice it too, Scott?
Yeah, and frankly, for whatever you think of somebody's politics, when I saw former President Clinton, I felt sorry for him. He does look like he's in poor health. He looks more feeble than they're letting on, and I hope that's not the case. I hope it was just a long day and he was tired, but things don't look good for him. Quite a contrast if you look at the background of the Clinton speech with the crowd that they put behind them and that which they put behind Bernie Sanders. I mean, the Bernie Sanders people just look like they were going to explode out of their sneakers half the time during this speech, and there was just a much different atmosphere. Hillary's speech came across as one long scolding session. And Bernie's, believe it or not, even though you'd think the old geezer seems like that, it wasn't like that at all. He was saying what they wanted to hear, and they hung on every word.
Martin O'Malley dropped out. He never caught fire. He was supposed to be the chief rival to Hillary Clinton in this campaign. Why did he flop?
Again, I think it's mostly a clash of personalities on the Democrat side this year, and because the ideological differences really aren't as great as most people like to think they are. I think O'Malley's niche in this was to be the progressive darling, and Bernie Sanders harshed that mellow for him. I think that was what happened there. And nobody thought, because Bernie Sanders is more fiery about it, he can sell it harder. He's frank about it. He's not ashamed. He's like, I'm a Democrat socialist. This president didn't go far enough. He's bold about that. And I think that's what happened. And had O'Malley's ego not kept him in, Bernie would have won Iowa. I will safely bet that the little bit O'Malley got in this election were progressives who otherwise would have caucused for Bernie Sanders had he not been in this race.
What's your theory, Scott?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's always been a stunning, I think, missed opportunity to the Democrats, to me, that Martin O'Malley didn't become more than he did. I mean, he seems to me to have it all. He speaks well, and I don't think he's entirely unenthusiastic. People like him. He's handsome. He's ripped. He plays the guitar. And he's a mayor and a governor who's actually done something. And I think that just goes to show you what's happened to the primary group of Democrats, those who participate in caucuses and primaries, the most hardcore Democrats, is they're much more susceptible to a story that says, I dream a dream for the future for you, than a story that says, I have actually done things.
I have a theory on why he never took off.
Okay.
This is the cycle on the Democratic side of the Black Lives Matter movement.
Yeah.
And he was the mayor who bought into the extremely successful James Q. Wilson theory of broken windows and going after crime and having an aggressive police force that was out there preventing crime before it happened. And if he was going to run on the success of his mayorship in Baltimore, that is not only a central part of it, that is the crowning achievement of his tenure as mayor of Baltimore. And you can't run as a tough-on-crime Democrat in this cycle. It's just the environment won't support it.
I agree with that. I don't know how much that factored in nationally this time. I really do think it's a Bernie Sanders lightning in a bottle kind of thing effect. It's just like he is just screwed. I mean, we keep making the comparisons, but he's the Trump on that side. He's the X factor that nobody planned on and showed up and just started dominating the headlines.
Personality trumps in this election.
Yes, personality trumps in this election. And don't get Sanders in your pantsers or something. I don't know. As long as we're punning around.
All right, Cruiser gets the last word. Now it's your turn. What do you think? Were there shenanigans in the Democratic caucus? And did Hillary steal it from Bernie? Let us know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'm John Phillips. Thanks so much for watching The Rundown.